Thanks everyone for joining this afternoon. We've got a really exciting session today. It's one of my favorite courses that we offer at the University of Tasmania. Before I go on, my name is Mona Maliki. I'm from the International Student Recruitment Office here at the University of Tasmania. I'm one of the student recruitment officers. I work directly with future students as well as our education agents as well. I've got our Professor Jason Byrne here with us. He's a professor of human geography and planning. So he will be taking us through today what the Masters of Planning offers for our international students and agents who are on board today who would like to know more information. So Professor Jason will take us through today through the session. Feel free to pop in any questions you guys might have through the Q&A chat box, and we will have a Q&A towards the end of the session where Professor Jason will answer some of your questions. So feel free to put in through your questions throughout the session as well. It doesn't have to be towards the end. So I will invite Professor Jason to share his screen whenever he's ready. And I hope you guys find today's session really, really useful because it's one of our popular courses at the University of Tasmania. But I'll hand over to you, Professor Jason.
Thank you, Mona, and good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to have you join us, and I feel very privileged to be able to talk with you about something that is really important in my life, and I'm sure in your lives as well, whether you realise it or not, and that's urban and environmental planning. So welcome to our webinar. Today I want to talk a little bit about what we offer here at the University of Tasmania in our planning offerings. We have two offerings. The first is the graduate diploma in environmental planning, and we also offer the Masters in urban and regional planning. Our emphasis here at the University of Tasmania is on planning for equitable and sustainable places. It's our key point of distinction from other planning degrees in Australia and around the world, is our focus on equity and sustainability. But before I go any further, I want to just play you a short video from the Planning Institute of Australia. I'm a member of the Planning Institute of Australia, about what is planning, because rather than assume you know what planning is, let's have a quick primer on what is planning. And I will check my volume and make sure this is working for you as well. But
ever wonder how a community kind of just happens? Because it's a bit of a small miracle. The places we live are like theatres, where hundreds, thousands, and sometimes millions of people are simultaneously living, eating, buying, selling, making, working, romancing, moving, building. It's amazing the whole thing doesn't all fall apart. But have you ever thought about what's going on behind the scenes? Before I go any further, I am not talking about event planning here. This has nothing to do with weddings. Planning is the process through which governments, businesses and residents come together to shape their communities. It's so important there's an entire profession dedicated to it. Planners. Like the communities they work in, the planning profession is complex and diverse. Some planners work on issues like housing, working towards providing safe and affordable places to live in. Other planners work in transport, improving networks of roads, trails, bus routes, footpaths and bike lanes to help everyone get around. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Planners are also involved in design, protecting heritage, promoting energy efficiency, celebrating the arts and culture, protecting the environment and protecting places from flooding or fire or drought because climate change. The list goes on and on and on. And whether they work in government, the private sector or in not-for-profits, planners are tasked with finding solutions to those issues. They conduct research, consult with professionals, they analyse, try to predict the future, and in the process they write reports, give presentations, talk to the community, create models and designs and make maps. They make lots and lots of maps. And when all of that comes together, planners, well, they plan. They create policies and promote good planning outcomes to help guide communities towards the future. But good planning isn't just a document, it's a process, one that consults and collaborates with people. It's key that planners recognise change and work with communities to plan for it, rather than being overwhelmed by it. But above all, planning is an attitude, one that firmly believes that when people work together, they can make a difference. And that's planning in a nutshell, or at least what we can say about planning in a minute or two. It can seem like organised chaos at times, but that's the hard work that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that our communities are enjoyable and worthwhile to live in. If you want to learn more about planning and the profession, check out the Planning Institute on their website at www.planning.org.au.
So that's planning in a nutshell. It's a really exciting profession. I've worked in Western Australia before as a town planner, an environmental planner and a policy officer before I did my PhD in California at the Centre for Sustainable Cities. And I love planning, so it's great that you can join us today to talk a little bit about planning and planning at University of Tasmania. So like I mentioned, planning here at University of Tasmania is all about equitable and sustainable communities. So planners, as you might have gleaned from that short video, work with communities to create places. That is, we work to bring the future, a possible future, into reality. We focus here at the University of Tasmania on how to make sure that that future is a future that everybody can share, regardless of race or ethnicity or gender or education levels. And we're very focused on making sure that marginalised and disadvantaged communities don't lose out in the planning process. So that's one of the first things we offer. And the second one is we have a key focus on climate change and natural areas. And so we want to make sure that we can enhance what's called the livability of cities through best planning practice. Now, when you think about livability, you might imagine a walk to work or a walk to school or just a walk around your neighbourhood. And that might include, for example, really good tree canopy cover over footpaths or sidewalks. It might include being able to walk very easily to a school or shops or places of employment. So livable places are also walkable places. And generally, we think about livable places as places that have good environmental quality. So they're not polluted. You've got access to fresh drinking water, sunlight, fresh air, and these are key elements of planning and the kind of planning degree that we offer here at University of Tasmania. We also are interested in how we might sustain places and people into the future through integrated techniques and approaches. And we can talk about that a little bit more in the question and answer session in terms of the kinds of core transferable employability skills that you'll learn in this degree. As we mentioned, we want to foster social equity and ensure that our cities and settlements are resistant to things like climate change, which are big issues that are confronting the planet, populations the world over. In this photograph here, you can see some of our students undertaking a heritage assessment out at Derby, a small town in Tasmania. We are a place-based university. We have fieldwork opportunities and opportunities for you to firsthand explore the built environments of Tasmania that make us truly unique. So our students accompany us on field trips out to different areas. So this is not shameless self-promotion. This is me with a student downtown in Hobart looking at a real-life development. We have industry partners who we work incredibly closely with. As I said, I'm a member of the Planning Institute of Australia. I sit on the local Tasmanian division of the Planning Institute. And we work alongside state and local government and the private sector. And you will have an opportunity in this degree to learn not just real skills, but to work alongside our industry partners as well. So what kind of careers could you get in planning? You had a tantalizing glimpse of this in the short video that I showed you. But these careers that you could choose include working as a strategic planner. So that's making those maps and preparing those documents that anticipate the challenges of the future. For example, we are an increasingly urban species. That most of the world's population now lives in cities and built environments. That's just over 50%. By the middle of this century, it'll be closer to 3/4 of the world's population living in towns and cities. And that's a huge challenge for us. How do we make sure that you have water supply, sanitation, availability and security of food, the ability to move around from one place to another to get jobs and education? These are all core things that planners do. And one of the critical ones is how do we create enough apartments and houses and places where people can live as they move into cities? So you might land up in strategic planning, or you might land up in statutory planning, making those everyday decisions about, for example, approving a development in a city. We teach environmental planning, and you can have a career in environmental planning. For example, figuring out how to use urban greening and green infrastructure to cool cities from urban heat island effects and future climate change impacts. You might find yourself working in state government like I did for almost a decade, preparing policies and guiding decision-making in the state, or working with an infrastructure provider. Some of our students, graduates, now work with Hydro Tasmania in delivering renewable energy projects. You might find yourself working in a natural resource management agency at either the state level or the government level, for example, in preparing conservation management plans to protect and manage critically endangered species. Yep, that's something that planners do as well, believe it or not. You might find yourself working in a transportation agency. So there's all kinds of talk about flying cars, and you might have seen images of Uber thinking about having what would be glorified drones, flying vehicles that you could call up on your phone in Melbourne and commute from one place to another. We don't even know what that future looks like yet, and whether planners might have to be skilled in air traffic control as well. We might, in terms of routing, protecting airspace, thinking about the delivery of people and how they move around built environments. And that's one of the key functions of transport planning, something else that we teach here at the University of Tasmania. You might find yourself working, for example, in a consulting firm in the private sector. There's huge jobs growth in the private sector around Australia and around the world at the moment. Or you might even find yourself working for a non-government organisation, for example, with the Environmental Defenders Office, representing the community and community interests, or representing the rights of non-human species in the planning process. So there's a wealth of opportunities for planners. Let me just speak a little bit about our planning offerings, and we can come back to this in more detail later if you have questions in the chat about the core units that we offer. I can see there's a couple of questions appearing in the chat already, and Mona, do feel free if you need to interject at some point, and I'm happy to talk about those real time. But I want to make sure that we allow plenty of time today for two-way interaction, not just me being a talking head. So our Masters of Planning is a 2-year degree, full-time. You can take it part-time as well. It's accredited by the Planning Institute of Australia, and that's really important. You want to make sure that you choose a degree that has peer accreditation. That means that when you graduate, you can become a certified planner, and your degree means you are eligible for working in industries that only employ people who have degrees that have been accredited by the Planning Institute. Because we partner really closely with the Planning Institute in our professional placements, you will get to work alongside qualified planners as part of our degree. This degree is what we might call a recertification degree. It's designed for people who already have a degree in a different field. So, for example, my undergraduate degree was a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology and Geography, but also then I went and did a planning degree. This would have been the perfect degree for me. Rather than having to do another bachelor's degree, I could have done a master's instead if it was around and being offered at that time. So if you've come from a different background, whether it's in education or nursing and health, or for example, in business or surveying or engineering, or a whole heap of allied fields like that, even accounting, we have students from very, very diverse backgrounds who choose to do this master's degree. And as I said, it's what we would think of as a requalification or a recertification degree. So in 2 years, we can upskill you as a planner in the key employability skills that you'll need, and then you'll get an opportunity to be employed as a planner, for example, perhaps tackling climate change or developing solutions to some of the biggest challenges that our societies face at the current time. Our degree does include a professional placement. I run that placement unit, and we pair you with industry partners to work on real live industry projects. So at the end of your placement, not only will you have key employability skills, you'll have experience that will help you in securing a job in planning. Our other planning degree that we offer here at University of Tasmania is a graduate diploma of environmental planning. Now, this is 1 year full-time. Again, you may be eligible to take that part-time under some circumstances. It's designed primarily for people who want to update their knowledge and skills. So maybe you have an allied degree in surveying or engineering and you want to update knowledge and skills. This degree will enable you to secure employment as a planner, but primarily it also serves as a pathway into our masters. So if you did this graduate diploma and you choose to then proceed with getting fully qualified as a planner, you would just do 1 extra year with us and you would get a master's degree in planning. So the graduate outlook for planners is really exciting. If only I had known when I was younger and in year 12 at school what career lay ahead of me, I think I could have relaxed a whole lot and not been quite so stressed out when I was leaving school. One of the things I would have realised is that as most of the world's population has moved into towns and cities, it's created incredible growth in jobs for planners and allied professions. So the job market for planners across Australia is still incredibly strong in both the public sector and the private sector, and with non-profit and community organisations. The jobs growth projected through to 2024 is very strong, with 13.8% growth in jobs for urban and regional planning. And this is commensurate with other cognate fields, for example, surveyors, architects and designers, and policy and planning managers. But we have a slight edge in planning, as you can see from these statistics. There is a lot of jobs growth in planning. This image here shows some of our students. In fact, one of my master's students is in this image here, Kelly, who's doing her master's thesis on me with urban greening and climate change. And again, they're out in the field looking at real life planning issues as part of their degree. So I just touched on the idea of research. One of the key things we've learned from our industry partners is that our students need transferable employability skills. Now, these are the skills that are in hot demand by employers right around Australia and around the world. These, for example, are skills in communication and critical thinking, skills in design-based problem solving, and skills in undertaking research in order to prepare evidence-based policy. As I said, these skills are in high demand and they are core. We've embedded them within our recently re-accredited planning degree. This planning degree, the Visiting Accreditation Committee said it was at the cutting edge of Australia's planning degrees in terms of the subject material that we teach and the quality of the education that we offer. So we're very proud of that achievement from the Planning Institute. And at the core of our degree is this idea of doing evidence-based policy, being able to undertake research. So you could choose, for example, to specialise in our independent research stream, provided that your grades were high enough, and you'd be able to then undertake a supervised thesis working with someone like myself and potentially with an industry partner on a real world problem. So you would undertake cutting edge research that is linked to sustainability and equitable planning. We've got some examples here on screen, for example, livable communities or removing barriers to food production. My own research is how do we reduce the impacts of heat stress on cities and how do we adapt our built environments for climate change. And you can see that on the image here with urban greening being one of those key initiatives. But one of my master's students from the last couple of years won an award from the Planning Institute of Australia, a national award for her work that she did in renewable energy planning. And that's another growth area that we have here in Tasmania. We have a commitment to being 200% renewable energy based here in Tasmania. We already have 100% of our energy from renewable energy. And this is one of the pathways that you might be able to choose if you did a degree with us. So I'm going to leave my presentation there because I don't want to be talking and talking. I'd rather interact with you. And so what I might do is stop sharing my screen momentarily, Mona, if that's okay, and hand over to some questions. How does that sound?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Professor Jason. That was really insightful, and it gave such a different perspective to what I always just assumed what Masters of Planning was, because when we explain to students what it is, urban planning can mean a gazillion things. And I think that video was a really good one to sort of summarize everything and show all of the different areas that students can actually work in. And it's so broad and vast. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And I think it's also one of those key areas where it's very attractive for international students, because we have a lot of students coming from different backgrounds, as you tapped into it just a while ago. And it's very common among students who come from different backgrounds, because they do see it as that stepping stone of changing of career path or whatever it is. So, which is fantastic. There is one question in here from Hajira. Can you tell me about courses and fee structure? So, Hajira, I might take you through the fee structure. So with our Masters of Planning, the international tuition fees for international students is about 33,950 Australian dollars per year. It is a 2-year degree. I'm assuming you're speaking about the Masters of Planning, and that one is it's roughly at $34,000 per year, roughly. So there are other requirements that you'll have to meet as well. There are on our website, but I'm not sure which ones exactly you're wanting to know, but everything is on our website. I will pop through actually the link for the Masters of Planning and the grad dip over here, so you can have a look. But feel free to have a look through it and just put through any questions you've got about it.
Maybe what I could do quickly, Mona, if that's okay, is just scroll through the webpage. I can share my screen and show students. Would that be okay? Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're all right.
So hopefully right now you can see our masters and it has the entry requirements. As Mona said, it's a minimum of 2 years full-time or a maximum of 5 years. We offer this degree in distance mode as well as in person. So you can study with us online. We've become very nimble and clever at delivering our offerings online over the last couple of years. So why don't I scroll down and you can have a look here at the course structure, which is the question that we just had. So year 1, we have core planning units such as critical planning, theory, processes and applications, and planning history. That's a unit that I teach. Statutory land use planning, which is a unit that teaches you about planning law and planning regulation. And that's taught by Emma. Urban planning and design, which is a unit that Kate teaches, and that's based in the real world. Kate has a whole bunch of field work that's linked to this, including working with Tasmanian Aboriginal people on creating fair and equitable built environments. So urban planning and design is a growth area in planning. Then there's also a 25 credit point unit that you could choose from, or 2 12.5 credit point units. And these include things like planning and managing for sustainable systems, environment impact assessment, and geographic information science. And we have one of the world's best remote sensing and spatial science departments here at the University of Tasmania. They've been recognised as among the best in the world, and you can take units with some of those faculty as well. And then in year 2, climate change with a focus on regional planning and economics and policy, and the professional placement that I will help you with. And then if you went through the professional research stream, you would do professional research methods, another one that I teach, and professional research practice, where you'll learn about bushfire management. Or you could choose the independent research stream, in which case you would do a thesis. And on our webpage, there's also information about credit transfer and articulation pathways. So I might just stop sharing there, Mona, if that's okay, and I can go back to the question that you were going to ask.
Fantastic. That was really, really good. I did have a question come through. Are students with a bachelor's in an unrelated degree eligible for the Masters of Planning? I guess we touched base on that, but.
We did. And so some of the information is on our website, but yes, we've had people coming in areas that are not what you would traditionally think of as being cognate fields, so closely related fields, not planning or engineering or surveying, but more like, for example, healthcare or sociology or education. We have people coming in from backgrounds like that. You could also, provided that you met our entry requirements, perhaps have more of a non-traditional pathway. So you might have a background in the arts or literature. Mine, for example, was in anthropology, and who would have thought that a background in cultural anthropology would have been so critical and important and useful? But one of the things we know now is that our cities around the world are incredibly diverse. We have people from all walks of life who live in cities, many who are English as a second language speaker here in Australia. They have particular needs. We also have people from backgrounds with disability. And so it's really important that planners are attentive to what we would call inclusion, diversity, and equity and justice. And they're key platforms of our planning degree.
That's amazing. I did notice you mentioned before in the first slides that the Masters of Planning, the planning courses, they're more into equity and sustainability of communities. Comparing that with other planning courses, what are some of the areas that other sort of, I guess, institutions look into? And how is that sort of different in terms of study, I guess, compared to equity and sustainability?
Sure. So the emphasis of some other equity development related degrees. Some universities have a very clear focus on how do you make money out of developing cities. We have economics components, but our primary emphasis is about looking after people from broader society. Other universities have a very explicit focus on transport planning. We teach transport planning here, but in an embedded way. So for those people who are wondering about Tasmania, we have very highly car dependent cities here in Tasmania. Around 80 to 83% of the trips that people make in our cities are done in a private automobile. That means we have, for quite small cities, surprisingly high levels of traffic congestion and even gridlock streets at times. And so our emphasis is on switching to alternative modes of transport. And we build that again from an equity and sustainability perspective. So encouraging walking and cycling and using public transport. We also have really good relationships with health, and that's what sets us apart from some other universities. So we work closely with people from the Menzies Institute of Health, for example, on understanding how our built environments can lead to depression or anxiety or obesity or coronary heart disease, and what measures we might take to overcome these issues. And again, that sets us apart from other universities.
Really interesting with health. And I'm assuming you'd work very closely with the Wicking Centre as well. Is that right?
That's right. And Tasmania is known for a world first experiment here in dementia, where a dementia village has been built, and it's been designed in such a way that people who have dementia can live really fulfilling lives even though their memories might be a bit affected. And so this is a world first experiment in building what looks, for all intents and purposes, from the outside like a suburb with a hair salon and a general store and these kinds of things, but it's a self-contained healthcare facility for people with dementia.
It's amazing. We did have a question here from Hajira. You did mention, Hajira, you're an education consultant. Happy to speak to you directly by email if you have any specific questions about courses. I'm assuming other courses you're talking about, but with the IELTS requirement or PTE requirement for this course is students generally need an IELTS of overall 6.5, no individual band less than 6. And we also accept PTE, academic only, overall 58 with no score lower than 50. So we do accept other modes of English, such as TOEFL, IBT, and previous studies in English as well, according to our English language guidelines. And we are able to package ELICOS with this course as well. So it's up to you as to what you provide. It's completely open. So feel free to submit an application if you guys are interested in this course. The next intake is February next year, February 2022. Students who are stuck offshore, you are able to start your studies online and come here when the borders open. And at the moment with the COVID situation, the state government is working around what we can do to make that happen, I guess, at a federal level as well. We're lucky here in Tasmania, we haven't had COVID yet. We haven't had COVID for just under 1 year now. We did have one case in quarantine, but that was all resolved. But we don't have any community transmission or any cases here in Tasmania. So in terms of a health and safety perspective, we're fine here. But that brings me to my next question, Professor Jason. With COVID now and the pandemic, how is that changing in regards to planning? Is that affecting anything at all?
Yeah, I do a lot of media engagement and discussions with the media, and an interview that I had recently was exactly on that question, Mona, about how will COVID affect our cities. So one of the things we've noticed with lockdown is that many people yearn for contact with nature. Many people who live in apartments might be stuck looking out their window and not being able to get to a park, or if they walk around their immediate neighbourhood, there's not a lot of trees or vegetation cover. So our specialty here in environmental planning is looking at how we can rapidly green cities, but in a way that enables physical distancing so that people can be outside, experiencing fresh air, seeing each other, but not having high levels of disease transmission. And it's fascinating, in response to epidemics in the past, cities have changed, such as the tuberculosis epidemic that we had in the past. And one of the things that happened there was making sure that our houses and buildings were well ventilated with cross ventilation. And that's something that we're considering here in response to COVID. How can we have well ventilated indoor spaces? How can we have public transportation systems that are also ventilated so you might be less exposed to COVID? I'm sure it's hard for people to see right now, but I'm sure we will work our way through this pandemic and come out the other side in the future. But we're already thinking, Mona, about how students who are offshore can still do a degree with us, for example, and do a placement. So we've, again, worked with our industry partners, and it's the first time this has been done in Australia. We're really kind of leading the way here in designing placements that can be done in a kind of virtual way. So students will join a team, they'll work with an industry partner on a real project, and they can do that in distance mode, whether that's from Melbourne or Mumbai. And the reason this works is because we've asked our partners to bring a project to us that involves research, that involves understanding the built environment, using remote sensing skills, even using things like Google Earth to explore the built environment, and then to write reports and prepare maps and develop scenarios and come up with alternative solutions. And so you might find yourself working with a team of students, with some students who are on the ground here in Tasmania, but can collaborate with you internationally, and you can get a real placement experience. The benefit of that of course, is that this is the way the 21st century is working, is increasingly what we're doing right now is how many communications and collaborations will occur in the future. COVID, if anything, has fast-tracked existing trends, and this is one of them.
Very interesting. And I think it's a very interesting time, isn't it? Because COVID's hit different countries in a different way. In Australia, it's been completely different to India, for example. So, and so many other countries. So I think it's a really good opportunity for students to get on board with these changing times and the progression, especially that virtual aspect for the placement. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I guess another follow-up answer to your question, Mona, and a really good one, is part of making our cities more livable is enabling people to interact with each other in meaningful ways on the ground plane. So in front of street front shops, for example, or street front markets. And we're currently retrofitting green space and retrofitting what are called parklets. So it's small outdoor spaces where people can dine in a physically distanced way, like we see in Paris and New York. We're doing that here in the heart of Hobart and creating spaces that are pleasant and convivial and lovely to be outside in, but are also safer. And in the long term, this is what we want our cities to look like anyway, is more cycling, more walking, less car use, that are healthier for us physically, that are healthier for the planet, and that are also spaces where we might see other species enjoying our cities with us. For me, that's one of the reasons I came back to Australia, was being able to wake up and hear amazing bird song in the morning right outside my window, to see wallabies bouncing across my front lawn in the mornings, and to see possums running up and down the trees outside my house. So it's a huge advantage we have here in Tasmania, is we're very close to nature and we're bringing that nature right into the heart of our cities.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you find these changes done bit by bit. So it's something that society also gets used to very slowly, and suddenly becomes common norm, these pocket little areas of parks or whatever it is that's entering in terms of infrastructure, what's visible or what we're experiencing on a daily situation. I think when it's slowly introduced, society gets used to that and then they move on to the next thing. So and I think, yeah, COVID's been really interesting in trying to introduce those different methods of interaction.
They're very good observations, Mona.
Yeah. Hajira, you've mentioned another question. I might answer this one offline because it's such a big question. Gaps, this is more in terms of admission. So it's more so, it depends on when the student has previously graduated, what they're sort of wanting to study, their course progression. A lot of factors come into play. I have sent you my email address though. Feel free to send me an email if you have any further questions about admissions and things like that. Happy to sort of answer you offline. That would be fantastic.
And Mona, we do look at students based on their merits as well, right? So we consider people from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, people who might have had a gap, and we will openly consider those.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. We also do, I was going to talk about scholarships. We do offer the Tasmanian International Scholarship for the audience, just an FYI. I will post the link on the chat as well. It's a 25% discount. It's based on your previous study. We also do apply it for the grad dip and the Masters of Planning as well. I will post the link here to everyone. So feel free to have a look at it in your own time. There's lots of effort, frequently asked questions on that website. We do look at your previous study. So if you're applying for the master's level or the grad dip, we will look at your previous study. So usually for masters, it would be a bachelor degree or another previous qualification before that. So as long as it's completed within a 12-month minimum full-time time frame, and you've got an average of B+ on your previous study, you may be eligible to receive a 25% tuition fee discount per year. So it runs for the duration of the course. We also do have the Destination Australia Scholarship that's open at the moment for international students. It does close on the 31st of October. I will also put the link in this session here, but it's a good one to apply for. It does run for the duration of the course as well. I'm just trying to find it here. There you go. It closes 31st of October. It goes for up to 4 years. So it definitely covers Masters of Planning and Grad Did. The amount is $15,000 per year. You do have to separately apply for this though, because it's more government related funding. The first one, the Tasmanian International Scholarship, it's automatically assessed as part of your letter of offer. You don't have to apply for it. This second one, you have to apply for it. Feel free to have a look in your own time, but it's a good one to start applying. Have a look at the websites we've provided. Professor Jason's had already taken you guys through it. And if you guys have any further questions, definitely let us know. I can't see anything coming through, and I don't have any personal questions, but I found it really intriguing. I think it's such a fantastic area to go through. And especially, we get a lot of queries from students who are engineering, come from engineering backgrounds, and they don't necessarily want to do a master's in engineering again. So we usually recommend this area for them as a bit of a twist or a non-engineering background. So a lot of our engineering students, background students, do enjoy getting into this. And also some students who are not eligible to enter directly into a Masters of Professional Engineering, for example, they do apply for this as well on the side. So they don't mind going either or. So it's just an interesting area. I think it's really important these days, especially with COVID. And I enjoyed your session, Professor Jason.
Thank you, Mona. Well, we're finding on that point, we're finding students who have come from an engineering background are very successful in the planning degree and at getting jobs. People with an engineering and planning background are getting jobs very quickly. They're in super high demand. We have students from Malaysia, from India, from China, from Vietnam, from Thailand, from Myanmar, a very international cohort. And those students working in our professional placement program are getting jobs in state and local government. We have students from Africa as well. So you'll find yourself among a very diverse cohort, working, of course, with our local domestic students, but having a fabulous group of people who you'll be experiencing your degree with and who will become lifelong friends and colleagues as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Professor Jason. It was lovely to hear you speak. I really enjoyed the session today, and thanks for our audience for joining. We had a really good turnout. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send an email to your.study. It was on the slide at the last slide that Professor Jason had. So it's your.study. I'll just type it in here. Any questions you guys have, send it through, whether it's admission related. If you need to speak to someone from the college, you can speak to Professor Jason. We're happy to get you in contact if you have specific information that you want about the course. So feel free to send an email. It was really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks, everyone.
That's great.
See you very soon for our next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona.
Bye.